On Thursday the 1st of February, just earlier this year, a 16-year-old girl named Asata Amun was captured by her doorbell camera running out of her house with no shoes on her feet before she would mysteriously disappear. The next day, she was reported missing by her father Kwabena after he watched the footage from the night before, but despite leaving in her bright pink pajamas, no witnesses would ever come forward. In the days leading up to the incident, Asata had complained to her mother Jasmine that she didn't want to stay with her father anymore, but given their parental agreement, there wasn't much that could be done. However, it would be revealed months later that the couple had actually divorced due to the fact that Kwabena had been abusive in the relationship. So once the police were made aware of this, they immediately decided to conduct a search of the property. But even after bringing Kwabena in for questioning and seizing as much evidence as they could, to this day the case remains unsolved, and the missing teenager is still yet to be found, leaving her family understandably devastated, as they are only left to wonder what really happened to Asata Amun, and more importantly, who could be responsible. Asata Amun was born in the late 2000s to her parents Jasmine Dominique and Kwabena Amun in the state of Connecticut, where she grew up alongside the rest of her family. Not too much is known about her childhood, but what we do know is that Asata was always described as a kind and intelligent girl who flourished in school and had her heart set on a bright future. However, in her teenage years, her parents would unfortunately decide to get a divorce, with Jasmine claiming that her husband was being abusive. But despite her incriminating statements, surprisingly the courts still sided with Kwabena, which meant that Asata and her sisters were forced to move in with him, only getting to see their mother on the weekends. But to make matters even worse, Kwabena would eventually decide to move out to Atlanta, Georgia, which was located almost 1,000 miles away from her mother Jasmine, meaning Asata was left even further isolated with a father that had apparently been abusive in the past. Now, it was never clarified if this abuse was mental or physical, but either way it can't have been an easy upbringing for Asata, so unfortunately it was not too surprising when her grades started to slip and she began to get in trouble at North Gwinnett High School as she grew more and more distant from her family. According to Jasmine, on multiple occasions she would receive phone calls and text messages from Asata begging to be picked up and taken away from her Atlanta home, but given the court-appointed agreement there was nothing that could be done. And so it would seem that Asata would continue to slip deeper into the darkness, with her father eventually threatening to send her to military school if she didn't do as she was told. However, despite her many pleas for help, the teenager would continue to remain under her father's authority until that fateful day in February when she would mysteriously vanish without a trace. On Thursday the 1st of February, the 16-year-old girl had found herself in the middle of a heated discussion with her father about her recent actions, as she had apparently been misbehaving at school. The pair would then continue to debate about this subject throughout the day, until the heated discussion eventually erupted into a full-blown argument, as Asata began to raise her voice at the prospect of being sent to military school. However, refusing to back down, Kwabena stood firm that if she didn't agree to change her ways, he would be signing her up to the academy. So in a moment of spontaneous panic, the teenager then rushed out of the house in her pajamas with no shoes on her feet, seemingly heading towards a friend's house to cool off. Now, according to Kwabena, he didn't actually notice that she had left the home in her pajamas until after checking the doorbell camera footage, so I can only assume that he did not physically see her leave, as otherwise surely he would have rushed after her. Then again, I suppose it's also possible that he was aware that she'd left, but only became concerned after seeing the camera footage, as she was wearing no shoes in the month of February. But either way, the one thing that is for certain is that after running out of the house, Asata would soon disappear into the night, causing her father to panic that she could have been in trouble. And so, after calling around her friends' houses and realizing that she had not arrived safely, Kwabena felt he had no other option but to report his teenage daughter as missing to the local police. On Friday the 2nd of February, the Gwinnett Police Department would receive a call from a concerned father after he explained how his 16-year-old daughter had left the house the previous night in nothing but her pajamas, and how he had been unable to get a hold of her since. According to Kwabena, although it was not unlike his daughter to run away from home, the fact that none of her usual friends had seen her was a huge red flag, especially given the fact that she had left the house with no shoes on her feet. So, keen to assist with the situation, the police decided to send out officers to the residence to conduct an official interview with the family, as they needed to know more about Asata before they started following any potential leads. During this conversation, it was quickly uncovered that the teenager had likely run away from home to avoid going to military school, and that she was probably hiding out somewhere until it was safe to return. However, after the police were provided with the doorbell footage of Asata leaving the residence, they quickly began to take the case much more seriously, as it appeared that she was not just running away from home, but potentially running for her life. So, concerned with the situation, the officers then returned to the police station and opened up an official investigation to the case, as they were determined to get to the bottom of it before it was too late. But despite working hard to uncover leads, days would soon turn into weeks, with the young woman remaining missing with not a single sighting coming forward in the months she had been missing. So, worried that the case was slipping out of reach, Asata's family then turned to the media for help, as they hoped by spreading the story this may have led to more leads and would have hopefully led to the discovery of their missing daughter. However, these pleas for help would seem to fall on deaf ears, as potential witnesses would continue to remain silent and the news reports would receive barely any attention from the public, with some YouTube videos getting less than 300 views. So, 4 months on from the disappearance, it seemed as if the case had already gone cold, as the police were still struggling to find any new leads and nobody was willing to come forward. But just as the case appeared to be running out of steam, a major update would soon burst onto the scene, after Asata's very own father would be revealed as a potential suspect. On Friday the 14th of June, an official warrant was obtained by the Gwinnett Police Department to search the home of Kwabena Amun, after it was uncovered that he had a criminal history of abuse, which would become more and more apparent as his cooperation with the police began to decline. But alongside this, after arriving at the home, detectives would go on to seize a dolly, gardening tools, several pairs of shoes, and even Kwabena's very own personal vehicle. They also used Blue Star technology to look for dried or cleaned up blood, to see if they could find any trace of a crime scene which could lead to further revelations. But the detail which firmly stands above the rest was that Kwabena Amun initially refused to hand over his daughter's cell phone when it was requested by the police. So after the detectives were able to start searching the property, with the warrant also giving them permission to access Asata's cell phone, upon checking the device, they were shocked to find that there were no call logs or texts, despite the fact that detectives had previously noted that Asata's sister had used it herself in the months after the disappearance, meaning there should have been some phone records to read through. However, despite these incredibly suspicious details, Asata's father has still not been named as an official person of interest in his daughter's case, and the young woman remains missing to this day, leaving her family understandably desperate for answers. Now, unfortunately, as far as the official investigation goes, this is all we know for now. But after watching Jasmine Dominique's interview with the WTNH News, I am certain that Asata's family are not going to stop searching for their loved one. And given the recent discoveries made by the police, we can only hope that the truth will soon reveal itself. However, given that Asata has now been officially missing for almost 6 months, alongside the incredibly concerning details that surround her disappearance, I can't help but feel that the likelihood of her safe return is only growing weaker as the days pass. So with that, let's get into some of the potential theories. Now, just before I get into the theories themselves, I wanted to quickly address the fact that we have to be extremely sensitive in this case, as I know how difficult these past few months have been for her family and they are trying to stay as positive as possible. So rather than delving too far into the darker theories in this video, I would prefer not to get lost in the gory details, as after all, the main point of this video is to raise awareness, and the last thing I want to do is cause any problems. However, saying this, one theory which I feel must be spoken about is the idea that Asata simply ran away from home and is hiding out somewhere out of fear of being sent to a military school for her bad behaviour. Now, this was a theory initially brought forward by both her father Kwabena and her mother Jasmine, as in the weeks building up to the disappearance, Asata had been clearly expressing how she wanted to leave home, so it would make logical sense if she decided to run away after an argument with her dad. But despite this being the obvious answer, there is still one question that prevents me from believing this to be the case, which is, why did Asata choose to leave the house without any shoes on her feet? Her father said he only noticed she was missing after checking the doorbell camera footage, so if it wasn't him, then who could be responsible for making her run out of the house so spontaneously? Well, perhaps Kwabena is simply lying, and made up the whole story to keep the police off his trail. After all, he was acting very suspicious after her disappearance, and even appears to have deleted Asata's phone history in preparation for a police search. But before I get too carried away, we have to be careful about vilifying a possibly innocent man, as until he is proven to be guilty by the courts, there is still every chance he may not have been involved in the disappearance at all. However, if Kwabena wasn't responsible, then what else could have happened? Well, another popular theory which I've seen being spoken about online is that she may have been spotted while she was out on the streets and then kidnapped by a passerby. Asata was supposedly on her way to a friend's house, so maybe she left without her shoes as she knew she wasn't going to have to walk far. But during the process, she was snatched by somebody who continues to hold her captive. Now, this is just about as far as I'm willing to go with this theory, but another angle that people online have been taking is that Asata could have been forced into the world of human trafficking after being promised a way out of her father's house by a person she maybe met online. We know how desperate she was to escape, so it wouldn't be out of the question that Asata, being a 16-year-old girl at the time, would seek refuge with another man, if it meant she didn't have to go to the military school. But one thing I will personally say about this theory is that even if Asata did choose to leave with a man that day by rushing out of the house and straight into his car, this doesn't mean that she has been human trafficked. In fact, she could just be held up in a house by choice, and with the lack of media attention, she may be completely unaware of just how much her family are worrying about her. However, before I continue on down this rabbit hole, the fact is, we still have no concrete evidence as to where Asata could be. So for now, we can only hope that she is hiding out somewhere safe and will return home when she's ready. But until then, I believe we have to keep sharing her story, as it can only be a matter of time before the right person sees it and helps reunite Asata back with her family once and for all. Anyway, with that, I think I'll leave this video here. But if you have any other theories of your own which you think may help explain what really happened to Asata Amun, please leave your ideas in the comments down below and I will do my best to get back to you. But until then, thank you so much for watching and make sure to subscribe to the channel for updates on these stories. Also, if you found this story interesting, feel free to check out the video on screen now, which covers the case of Janiyah Walker, who was another teenage girl who ran away from home, who is unfortunately still missing to this day.